the Seahawks next season. Pete Prisco is here. Pete, we talked about the Denver quarterback situation, and they were one legit quarterback away from becoming a real contender. We thought that was perhaps going to be Aaron Rodgers. What do you think of Russell Wilson going a mile high?
You got to give the Broncos a lot of credit. I mean, they're going for it. This is not unlike what the Rams did a year ago. Now, they don't have the same number of high-priced veteran players, but they appear to be going for it like the Rams did. You go make a move like this, you think you're ready to contend. I mean, they gave up a boatload to go get him. But when you have a starting quarterback in the league of this caliber, it automatically makes you a contender. And now all you have to do is fill the gaps around him, because this is a talented young team on the rise. I love the move for the Broncos. I don't understand it for the Seahawks. Pete Carroll's 70 years old. He's going to come back and coach again. I don't know if he necessarily signed off on this or whether John Schneider, who was trying to trade him a year ago, did. But this is a surprise move for the Seahawks.
It's coming ahead of the 4 p.m. Eastern Time tag deadline in the NFL. You're the king of the power rankings on CBSSports.com. Where do you slot the Denver Broncos right now with all those contenders, not just in the AFC, but specifically in that division where everybody else is a playoff team? I mean, I know the Chargers didn't make it last season, but they were an eyelash away, and they have Justin Herbert, a franchise quarterback as well. Where do you put Denver right now? I know we still have free agency and the tags and the draft to go.
Yeah, they're still behind the Chiefs and possibly still behind the Chargers. So, best case scenario might be 2, probably somewhere in the 3 range. I mean, it's a good team, but there's a lot of guys that have to step up and make plays and become better players. Jerry Jeudy being one of them. I mean, he's been a bit of a disappointment. I think that's important for him. Where do they get the pass rush from? Chubb is still there, unless he's part of this deal, and that hasn't come out yet, but there was some indication he could be in any quarterback trade. So if that's the case, do they go back and get Von Miller? If they don't, where do they get the pass rush from? So there are still questions, and I think they're right there probably behind the Chiefs with the Chargers. Might be 3, could be 2.
For the Denver Broncos, what do they need to do now that they have Russell Wilson, and you're going to be giving up some other players? There's, Drew Lock's involved and a couple other players likely that we have not heard yet, and multiple first-round picks as well. What else do they need to do now to become a real title contender?
Again, I go back to the pass rush. I mean, we don't know who is in this trade. If Bradley Chubb is in this trade, I think it's a real problem for him. They need to get better at rushing the passer, and that means maybe they bring back Von Miller. And he's hinting at that, by the way. There's been some little hints on Instagram that he's open to going back to the Denver Broncos, and so they need something like that. And here's the other thing they have to do: whatever draft picks they do have, they have to use them wisely. And by that, I mean you can't miss on them. And we've seen the Rams, and people point to Rams going for it, but Les Snead's done a great job of supplementing that roster with some down-the-line guys, and that's what you have to do. If you go get stars, you better have a draft picks and capital to go supplement the roster with some third, fourth, and fifth round guys who can step in and play. And I think that's the important thing for the Broncos going forward.
Broncos have won 3 Super Bowls over the last 25 years. John Elway won a couple at the end of his career. Went through a period of time where they did not get back to the Super Bowl until they got Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning led them to a couple Super Bowl appearances, 1 Super Bowl win. But when you look at the quarterbacks since then, Pete, has this been the worst team in the league at the quarterback position until now?
They're one of them. I mean, you look at who they've trotted in there, and, a year ago they thought Teddy Bridgewater would be that guy. I never did. And you look at this group, it's a who's who of who you don't want. And I think that's the problem when you're trying to solve the quarterback position. And now that burden shifts to Seattle. I mean, they're the team now trying to solve the quarterback position, which is why I don't understand why you get rid of a guy like this. And what do? Do they go inquire about Deshaun Watson? And what's his status in terms of the legal situation? If he can play or if he doesn't play, then what do? Do you use a high first-round pick, probably the one you got from the Broncos, to go draft a Malik Willis if you like him and you like that style? And remember, that style is a lot like what Russell Wilson brought to Seattle. So I think there's options there, but as you can see by that graphic we just had up, when you're trying to solve it, you're going to go through some growing pains, and your team isn't going to be very good, and that's why I think it's strange that the Seahawks traded away Wilson.
End of an era in Seattle with Russell Wilson leading 9 winning seasons before that losing season last year. How are you feeling right now if you're a Seahawks fan?
You're not happy. You're not happy. But look, in those early years, they won with defense, a dominant defense. They were, 4 straight years, they were the top scoring defense in the league. And I think the only other team that did that in the history of the league were the Browns Dynasty's teams of the 50s. I mean, that's made it easier to play their style, which Pete Carroll wanted to do, is run the ball and then take your shots down the field. As the defense aged, as they had to get rid of guys for cap reasons, they weren't as good anymore. And it put more of a pressure on the offense. And there's where you had a dynamic of a problem. Russ Wilson wanted to play loose and free and up-tempo, which I think they should have done. And Pete Carroll was still stuck in the old ways of wanting to run the football. And their defense wasn't good enough. So that's why they struggled at times. I think if you go to Denver now with Nate Hackett at quarterback, they're going to throw it around. They'll still run the ball, but they'll throw it around. He'll be happy. But if you're a Seahawks fan, you can't possibly like the idea of A, starting a rookie, B, maybe Drew Lock, or C, maybe exploring a trade to go out and get a guy like Deshaun Watson, and you don't know what his availability is.
All right, Pete Prisco with us here as the Seahawks agree to send Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos for several first-round picks, Drew Lock, and a couple other players to be named later, maybe a sack of footballs as well. Pete Prisco with us here on HQ. Much more, and an emergency pod is coming from the Pick Six fellas. Will Brinson and company on the Pick Six podcast have you covered, and they're going to be joining us here on CBS Sports HQ momentarily.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.